Story time about how I slept with my teacher and got pregnant. A little background information: I was 18 and in 12th grade. I had always had trouble in school, especially history class. And I had always had tutors and everything like that. And eventually I just got tired of trying to get my grade up because I realized that it was never going to happen. So my teacher was 27 years old. We're going to call him Mike. And Mike had a girlfriend. He had been staying after school helping me like every single day, from like 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Well, the one day I had this outfit on that maybe wasn't that appropriate, and I was being super flirty with him the whole time. To be honest, I just didn't want to put in the effort to get up my grades. And then 10 minutes later, he started getting handsy, and I told him that if he wanted to do anything, he had to get my grade up for me. So he did just that. Well, for the next couple of months, I would go over to his house to study, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I slept with my teacher and got pregnant. So like I said, I got tired of putting effort in to get my grade up, so I let him hit, and then I was going over his house after school. Well, later on at the end of the year, I find out that I'm pregnant. And because I was 18, I really didn't have to care about what my parents thought. So I told him, and surprisingly, this man was on board with it. He was like, "Oh my god, like, let's do this. I'm so happy." And I was like, what the fuck? Well, his ex-girlfriend found out, so she went and told the school. He got fired. And 3 years later, we're still together raising our child. Time about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So a little background information: I was 14 and in 8th grade. And we're going to call my best friend Ashley. Ashley was really nice at first. She always had my back when I needed her. But then out of nowhere, she started being super rude to me. She turned into one of those pick-me girls that would always make fun of you in front of other guys, talk crap about you to the guy that you liked. Well, the one day I hear her talking shit about me whenever we were in class. And everybody could hear her. She was literally on the whole other side of the class. And I asked her, "Hey, like, why were you talking about me?" She was like, "No, I was talking about a different girl." And I had a pretty unique name, so I was like, who else in the school could you have been talking about? But I just brushed it off. Well, then we were in algebra class and I heard her talking shit about me again. How I do my makeup so bad and I could never get a boyfriend, like I'm so ugly and all that stuff. Well, she thought that I wasn't mad at her, so she came up to me the one day and was like, "OMG, I have a boyfriend." Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend. So like I said, she would talk shit about me all the time, and I only confronted her that one time, so she thought that we were all good. So the one day before class starts, she runs up to me, she's like, "Oh my god, you'll never guess what? I have a boyfriend." She's like, "He's so cute, he's really popular, he's on the football team." And I was like, "Girl, whatever, nobody cares." Until I'm sitting in my first class of the day, and I remember that she made out with my boyfriend last year. I forgave her, of course. But because karma was taking a little bit too long, I figured I had to do something about it myself. So my plan was to hook up with her boyfriend. Do I feel bad about it? Absolutely not. So I went to my school's football game, and guess who I saw? My best friend's boyfriend. She couldn't make it that night. She had something to do, so I had him all to myself. So I went up to him, I started flirting with him, and I was like, "Oh, you should break up with your girlfriend and date me instead." But then he was like, "I thought you guys were best friends and I would never date you." Like for part 2 about how I was the toxic best friend. So like I said, I didn't know whether I should tell her that he added me on Snapchat or if I should. And I was going to until I got a Snapchat from him saying, "Hey, you're really pretty. I think we should talk sometime." So I ended up telling her about it because I felt really bad. And she was like, "This is why I can't trust girls. Like, you need to unadd him right now. Like, fucking block him." And I'm like, I didn't even do anything. Like, what the fuck? So whatever, I end up blocking him, it's fine, until he texts me one day. And he's like, "Hey, it's Jay, I think you blocked me on Snapchat, LOL. And him and I had talked a little bit in school, and I kind of started to like him. Well, fast forward, him and I ended up hooking up a few times, we were talking a lot, and he hadn't been texting Riley as much. Well, the one night while I was sleeping over at her house, my phone was going off a lot, and I didn't think to delete any of the messages, like for part 3. Part 3 about how I was the toxic best friend. So like I said, I was sleeping over her house the one night, my phone was blowing up, and she knows my password and everything, and I stupidly did not delete the text messages between Jay and I. And I kid you not, I wake up to a slap across the face. It felt like she slapped me with her fist, and it looked like it too because I had a black eye. So I woke up and she's like, what the fuck? Like, I hate you so much. Like, why would you do this? And I look down and she has my phone right in her hand on the text messages with Jay. And I ended up feeling really bad because she started crying, saying that, like, I knew that she liked him a lot. And I also knew the reason why he wasn't texting her as much. Well, then she ran downstairs and she told her mom. And the next thing I know, I had her mom, and her 3 other sisters screaming at me. And then I got blocked by Jay because she wasn't supposed to know, and she leaked his nudes. Story time. Would you call this cheating? So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school, and I was dating this guy who we're going to call Tom, right? When we started dating, everything was super good. But a little bit into our relationship, I started to get the ick. Anything and everything he would do would literally irritate the hell out of me. So at that point, I told him that we should take a break. So we did. Well, while we were on this little break, I decided to go out with my cousin the one night. And she had brought this guy who she was talking to at the time. We're going to call him Jake. Jake and I had the same classes in school, but we never really talked to each other. Well, I started to get to know him throughout the night, and I realized we had a lot in common. I felt like he was flirting with me, so I decided to flirt with him. When we got home, I had told her how much I really liked Jake. We ended up FaceTiming and falling asleep on the phone together. We all hung out again the next day, and I invited him back to my house. Like for part 2. Would you consider this cheating? Part 2. So like I said, we all decided to hang out again the next day. It was really cold out, so I invited everybody back to my house. And when we got back to my house, we were watching horror films. And I was cuddling next to Jake on the couch. And listen, I wanted to kiss him really bad, but Tom and I had just gotten done with our so-called break. So I decided to be loyal and not do that. Well, a few days after Jake and I talking, I realized that I wanted to be with him and not Tom. So I decided to end things with Tom, and now Jake and I have been together for 1 year and 2 months, and we couldn't be happier. But every time that we bring up Tom, Jake always tells me that I cheated on him. Would you consider what I did cheating? Story time about how my best friend kissed the guy that I liked right in front of me. So a little background information. I was 14 and in 8th grade. And we're going to call my best friend Sophia. We were in a friend group of 3. And the other person in our friend group, his name was Josh. And that just happened to be the boy that I really liked. And Sophia knew how much I liked him. Like, I would tell her all the time how excited I was, you know, that we were hanging out. And she would be like, oh my god, I'm so happy for you. Like, you guys would be so cute. Just a bunch of fake shit. So the one day we're all sitting in our free period, super bored, and our friend Dylan says, hey, why don't we play spin the bottle? With a water bottle, of course. So it was us 4 and a few other kids from our class. Well, Sophia decided to spin the bottle first. And of course, who does it land on? Josh. And I'm sitting back like I have nothing to worry about. My best friend wouldn't do that to me. Well, of course, I was wrong. I thought she was going to apologize, but after she gave me a very smirky smile, well, they started hanging out more and I felt extremely left out, so I just decided to forgive her. Part 2 about when I caught my stepdad abusing my mother. So like I said, we all moved in together. My mother was super happy, and I had a job. My best friend would come and pick me up after this job, and I would usually get off work around 7 p.m. Well, around this time, James would have already been at work. He usually started work at like 6 o'clock. But every time that I would come home, my mother would be crying in her bedroom. So I ended up telling my best friend about it, and she said that she would come and get me early the next day from work, so that way we could possibly see what was happening while I wasn't there. So fast forward the next day, Kayla come and gets me early from work. She pulls around the corner, and we walk to my house because they would have seen her car if we parked on the street. I quietly unlock the door. My best friend and I go upstairs. We hear my mom screaming in pain. And the bedroom door was wide open. He was hitting my mother. So I kind of whispered to my best friend to take a video while I called the cops. He ended up going to jail, got a restraining order, and now my mom and I are living in a new house. Story time about the time that I had a thing with my stepbrother. So a little background information. I was 14 and it was the first half of my freshman year. So my dad had recently broken up with my mom, and he had different girls in and out of the house 24/7. I mean, he was kind of doing his thing after a 15-year marriage. Well, the one day I'm sitting in the house and he brings this girl Kayla over. She had a few kids herself, but both of them said that they would never date. Well, I thought her son Tyler was extremely good looking. So him and I started talking over Snapchat, and things were going good for quite a while. Well, I would say a few months later, my dad told us that Kayla was coming over with her kids. And I was super confused because he seemed really nervous about it. So her kids and I were all sitting on the sofa, And they sat us down and they were like, we need to talk to you guys. We're gonna call my dad Mike. She goes, Mike and I are dating now, so we all have to get along. The reason why she said that was because she thought that I didn't get along. Part 2 about how I had a thing with my stepbrother. So like I said, my dad and her sat us down and she goes, Mike and I are dating now, da-da-da-da-da. And she was like, so we all have to get along now. Because she thought that I didn't get along with some of her kids, and her kids did not respect my dad at all. So like I said, Tyler and I were dating at this point. And I freaked out. I was like, you guys can't start dating because Tyler and I are dating. And Kayla was like, well, that's too bad. You two need to break up because I'm your new mother now. And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck did this bitch say? So I start screaming that it's not fair. Tyler's trying to calm me down. My dad is trying to calm Kayla down. To be honest, my dad didn't really care because I had told him about Tyler and I before the whole situation. I thought Tyler would be really upset at the situation, but he was actually pissed off at his mom. So we broke up. Kayla and my dad dated for a little bit over 2 months. Well, surprise, surprise, Kayla cheated on my dad with her ex. So Tyler and I started dating again.